We're now live streaming.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we are meeting here today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to the Public Forum of Council. This is the public forum that's being held before the full council meeting for Tuesday, the 13th of December, 2022. Want to welcome all those community members who have joined us via a webcast and who joined us via the web to speak in the public forum this evening. And we do that so in order to hear what the public has to say about some of the key issues that are on the agenda tonight. Just wish to remind all those who are speaking that this is being broadcast, and anything you say or might indicate will be recorded and could be used against you if somebody felt that you may have defamed them or something similar. So please be careful about what you say, and the council has, of course, no responsibility for what you say. Please make sure your phones are off, because that can interfere with the broadcast as we go ahead with it. First thing I just need to make sure is that none of the staff who I have on the screen in front of me up the top have any conflicts of interest to declare. Don't believe there are any. No hands are up, so we'll accept that. And so we'll move to the public speakers, and I'll just remind you that you have 3 minutes to give your presentation. And once your presentation has finished, I would ask you to obviously remove yourself from the forum. So we have, I think, 8 speakers tonight, and we'll go through them in the order of the papers. So the first speaker for item 2.1 is Brendan Moyle, and this is consideration for submissions and adoption of the draft Central Coast First Nations Accord. So if Brendan's there, welcome, Brendan.
Thanks, Rick. So I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit of feedback there, so I'll just turn my speaker down. Thank you very much, Rick, and thanks everyone at the council. Look, firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that we are on the ancestral lands of the Darkinjung people. The connections to this country span back thousands and thousands of years, over 60,000 years. I'd also like to acknowledge the fact that the Central Coast is a central place for the creation and dreaming stories for much of New South Wales, which is really fitting given the fact that we have a large number of Aboriginal people that have chosen to relocate and call the Central Coast home. I'd like to acknowledge the work undertaken by the Central Coast Council to develop the First Nations Accord. It provides a foundation for the Central Coast to work in genuine partnership with the broader Aboriginal community. As you're probably aware, the 2021 census data actually indicated that we actually have the fastest growing Aboriginal population in Australia here on the Central Coast, with now over 17,000 people. This is really important because many people are actually moving here to the Central Coast for a better life. Quite often, though, people are actually moving with higher levels of social disadvantage, economic disadvantage, and more complex needs in terms of the service system and how they actually interact with all tiers of government. I want to pay my respects to this as well, not just from Darkinjung's perspective, but also pay my respects to Vicky Parry from Barang, who will also be speaking, and particularly the important role that they're actually doing. For me, this is a growing community. It's extremely diverse, with mob coming from all over New South Wales and Australia. This growing community also needs different approaches to ensure that they can thrive here on the Central Coast. Many services, through our local Aboriginal community control organisations, some rely, particularly in terms of support with local government, with state government. Darkinjung Local Aboriginal Land Council recognises this and supports the Central Coast Council's position that this accord is more than just about one organisational group, Aboriginal group. And I need to pay my respects to our board and to our members in saying that as well. We recognise the diversity of this community, and we recognise the commitment of the Central Coast Council for wanting to work in partnership with us, in genuine partnership. This is consistent with the Local Government Association's commitments around the National Partnership Agreement or the National Agreement on Closing the Gap, which talks about the need to work in genuine partnership with shared decision-making with Aboriginal people, building and supporting the growth of the Aboriginal community-controlled sector, and transforming the way that government organisations work. In New South Wales, there are two other priority reforms, particularly around data sharing, which is a national one, but also those supporting Aboriginal economic development participation. This accord provides a foundation and a local opportunity, a local framework by which the Aboriginal community can actually work with council to deliver on that. And again, I have to congratulate council for that. Importantly, the accord itself also supports the key drivers and some of the key actions under various international doctrines, particularly the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The establishment of the Aboriginal Advisory Committee provides a foundation for council and the Aboriginal community to work in partnership and deliver against particularly Article 18 of the Declaration. That stipulates that we as Aboriginal people or Indigenous peoples have the right to participate in decision-making in matters which affect our rights.
Brendan, I'll have to ask you to finish up. You've gone past your 3 minutes, so if you could just do finishing up closing statement. Thank you.
Yep, I'll be 2 seconds. It's through representatives and institutions of our choosing. I have to pay our respects, particularly to the Central Coast Council, because this accord provides a framework to enable that. And for me personally, but also Darkinjung itself, we support that and thank the council.
Thank you, Brendan. Our next speaker is Vicky Parry, and she's also speaking on item 2.1, which is the considerations and submissions and adoption of the draft Central Coast First Nations Accord. If Vicky's there, welcome, Vicky.
Thank you. Sorry about that, a bit tech savvy. Yes, my name is Vicky Parry. I'm a Gummeroy woman from Moree, northwest New South Wales. We relocated to the Central Coast in the early 60s. So I grew up around Lisarow, attended the local primary school and also Gosford High School, and then moved up into the Wyong area. I'm also the Executive Director of Barang Regional Alliance, which is a governance group that it's a governance representative body. So we represent 7 Aboriginal organisations, including Darkinjung Local Aboriginal Lands Council, sit on that committee with alongside Yarran Eleanor Duncan Aboriginal Health Services, Naista Dance College, and the Gympie Aboriginal Corporation, the Glen, Barrabarang Corporation based at Gosford, and also Mingaletta down on the peninsula area. And part of what we do is around giving a voice to community. And I think the accord that's been developed by council gives us that opportunity now to be able to work more closely with council, but with the rest of the Aboriginal community, and how we can better shape what's happening as far as, development for our community, but also looking at the service delivery arm. So Barang represents empowered communities on one side and also local decision making. So we've been in negotiations with government for a number of years at the moment, but we're now picking up momentum to drive that a little bit further. We also, we've been there pushing for a number of years now. We had council come along to our first immersion program back in 2013, not too far back. But we've had, and I think at that time it was Councillor Holstein and his representative back then. So they've been part of the immersion program from the Central Coast to look at what our needs are. We work together. We also have community 2 associate memberships, which is the Central Coast Community Legal Centre and also the Wallatuka Institute of the Newcastle University. So we welcome the opportunity to have the accord and to bring together all Aboriginal people on the Central Coast to support what happens going forward. So it's exciting times for us.
Now, thank you. Now, our third speaker is Joy Cooper, speaking on item 2.2, the exhibition of the draft plan of management for community land. And welcome, Joy.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. I speak today on agenda 2.2, the exhibition of the draft plan of management for the Central Coast Council community land. I hope that it's good news that the council has prepared a draft area-wide plan of management for our community land. I'm thankful that this draft plan of management will be placed on public exhibition and there will be a public hearing. However, there are already a few alarm bells ringing about this agenda item. The first is that I've been clicking on the links and reading attachment 1, the draft area-wide plan of management, and attachment 2, the schedule of council community land, will be included in the draft plan. And I started clicking on the links when it first appeared last week. I clicked on it at Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and even today, even this afternoon, and there was nothing up. I understand that something as important as a draft plan of management for council's extensive portfolio of community land needs to be complete and correct before it goes on exhibition. However, by leaving it so late and giving the community access to these documents, council's transparency and accountability are already brought into question. Since October 2020 and up until September 2024, this forum is the community's one and only opportunity to raise points with you. Administrator, before you determine whether or not to adopt an item placed on the agenda by council staff. Forgive me for being hypervigilant, but there have been several attempts in the not so distant past to sell off our community land without proper consultation with the community. And when I see that the authors of the draft plan of management for our community land are council's commercial property manager and the unit manager for economic development and property, I am immediately a little bit on edge. The agenda item does, thankfully, reference Chapter 6 of the New South Wales Local Government Act, which clearly states that community land cannot be sold. It's our bushland, it's our parks, our reserves, our playing fields, and our open spaces. It's not surplus to needs, nor is it disposable. I look forward to reading the draft plan and seeing the schedule of community land. I hope that it rings true to the spirit and intent of Chapter 6 of the Local Government Act, which states that the purpose of classification is to identify clearly that land which should be kept for use by the general public, the community, us, and that land which need not, which is operational. Community land must not be sold except in very limited circumstances. Community land must not be leased or licensed for more than 21 years and may only be leased or licensed for more than 5 years if public notice of the proposal or lease is given. My second major concern is the timing of this agenda item. There's a term used by politicians called taking out the trash. If someone wants to make an announcement that they don't want to get much attention, they release it late on a Friday, too late for the weekend papers when no one's looking. I ask, why is the exhibition of such a major happening during a silly season? Why the urgency? Why does it come at the last meeting of the year? Why couldn't this wait until we're all paying attention in February? Please tell me this is not, in fact, a plan to reclassify more community land for sale.
Thank you, Joy. And we'll now move on to Barney Waters, who's talking on item 2.3, the sale of certain Gosford holdings to Minister for Skills and Training. So welcome, Barney. Do we have Barney here?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hart.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Barney Waters and I'm president of the Friends of the Performing Arts Precinct, or FOPAP. FOPAP has been campaigning for many years now for a performing arts centre or precinct to be built in Gosford. We have been promised various sites from the Gosford waterfront to the city centre. And we've also been told that state and federal funding was secured. It has been quite some time since the councillors, based on overpriced plans, were scared off by the development of the Performing Arts Precinct in Man Street. However, we cannot remain silent given the contents of tonight's agenda item 2.3. Gosford needs a cultural heart. We have lost count of the number of times that we have said that now. As its population expands, it will need a cultural heart even more than it does now. The most appropriate location for a cultural facility is Man Street. I urge you to reconsider the recommendation in agenda item 2.3. Please do not sell off this land. Gosford already has a fit-for-purpose TAFE. It does not have a town hall, a concert hall, or a cultural facility that is fit for that purpose. It does not have an entertainment centre with capacity to attract big acts that bypass the coast on their way north and south. The value of the coast visitor economy for a state-of-art performing facility would be in the billions. This would be a facility that could be used and enjoyed by the residents of Gosford, the immediate suburbs and villages around Gosford, and the whole of the Central Coast. It become an entertainment attraction for visitors far and wide. Why not set sights high? If the New South Wales government was serious about its land common TAFE deal, surely it would have progressed by now. You have until September 2024. There is a New South Wales election in March. Mr. Hart, you have an opportunity to represent the long-term interests of this community by directing the staff to reach a bit higher than the low-hanging fruit. We have to have some vision and have another look, a better look at delivering a performing arts precinct for the Central Coast. Local government areas much smaller than ours have built brilliant cultural facilities. Goulburn Mulwaree Council, with its population of only 30,825, this year opened the Goulburn Performing Arts Centre or the GPAC, located in the creatively reactivated McDermott Centre, Goulburn's historic town hall. It houses a funky cafe, box office with council chambers converted into the meeting place, a wine bar, boutique performance spaces, a glass atrium that connects to a 400-seat state-of-the-art auditorium, which includes wheelchair seating, a hearing loop. There is an opera pit and a 15K aluminum projector, plus 4 dressing rooms, band room, green room, workshops and loading dock. We have a population growing over 400,000 with no such facility in the main street of our main city. Where is our performing arts? The latest carrot the community has been offered gives no reassurance that we will ever get this promised facility. We've been told that the round building on the waterfront could be a cultural or arts building. We haven't received any clarity about the purpose of that building. Lot by lot, potential sites that would be suitable for a major cultural and performing arts centre have been sold off for private development. This prime piece of real estate in the middle of Gosford would be easy to develop and could be truly magnificent. You said the financial crisis is over. That means there's no hurry to sell this land. I believe a cultural facility in the heart of Gosford would be the future, would really revitalise the city and provide future generations with a community asset to be proud of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, and thank you for winding up there. Just a little over time, but still nonetheless pretty much on time. Thank you for those comments. We'll now move on to Joy Cooper again, who's still talking about, who's this time talking about item 2.3 again, which is the sale of the Gosford holdings to the Minister for Skills and Training. Joy, welcome back again.
Hello, Mr. Hart. Having already raised my concerns about agenda item 2.2 and now turning to agenda item 2.3, which I quite frankly find distressing and disappointing. This is a clear example of why I have reservations about the ability and intent of the professional arm of this council to manage our community land in accordance with the New South Wales Local Government Act 1993. Council's intention to sell off this prime real estate in the middle of Gosford city centre is one of the starkest examples of poor management of this community's assets that I've seen since the creation of the Central Coast Council. This debacle reminds me of the former Gosford Council's failed attempt to sell our pocket parks and reserves in 2015-2016. Central Coast Council's first administrator, Ian Reynolds, finally put a stop to that. May I remind you that these assets were part of the tranche 1 of the surplus to needs asset sell-off initiated in the dying days of 2020. They were pushed through with no public consultation. It was a late agenda item. It was put up late on the Friday night and voted on the Monday. The community were given no time to comment or bring any problems to the attention of the interim administrator, Mr. Dick Person. I remain unsure as to whether you were given all the facts about the tranche one sell-off of assets during your time as acting CEO. If you were fully briefed, then you would know that this site has our proposed performing art precinct. You would also understand that 73 and 75 Man Street were purchased by the Central Coast Council to form part of that performing arts precinct. Upon acquisition, they were classified correctly as community land. They can't be sold. They must now this must now Council's third attempt to push through a resolution to sell these lots off before they've even gone through the correct process for reclassification. The word subject to reclassifications does not cut it, Mr. Hart. First, there was a lack of public consultation about tranche one, not just a lack, there was none. We were told, the councillors, before they were disposed of, had already determined to sell these properties. Then when the community questioned the proposed sale of these assets, council attempted to get the local planning panel to advise on a backdoor way to reclassify 73 and 75 Man Street without following the requirements of the Local Government Act. That failed, and the planning proposal was lodged to amend the state environment planning policy for the Gosford City Centre. That planning proposal has been sitting at pre-exhibition stage on the New South Wales Government Planning Portal for many months now. I'm not a lawyer, but surely it would be best practice to resolve to sell this land to it would not be best practice to sell this land before it's been through the proper process of being reclassified from community land to operational land. I think it's potentially unlawful for you to pass a resolution agreeing to sell community land, even if you use the words pending reclassification. This matter is time sensitive, and you know it because the New South Wales government is edging closer to caretaker mode and the March 2023 election. The Broadwater Hotel sat in a derelict state for many years. I've just got a couple of sentences to go. Okay, for many years, while the good people of this community waited patiently for their long-promised regional library and then their performing arts centre. Mr. Hart, right now, you are the community's only representative. There is no need to rush this through. You reached your $60 million asset sales target months ago. Do the right thing and defer this agenda item until after 73 and 75 Man Street have been through the proper reclassification process. Stop wasting our money.
Joy, I've got to stop you there. You've had
I've finished. Thank you.
Considerably longer period. Thank you. We move on to our sixth speaker, which is Johnny Rove, speaking on item 2.6, Dogs and Open Spaces Action Plan Update. So, Johnny, if you're with us, welcome.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Hart. I welcome the opportunity to speak to Council regarding the Dogs and Open Spaces Action Plan as a spokesperson for the Safe Pippi Point Off-Leash Area campaign team. We strongly support the current recommendation to simplify the DIO SAP and there be no changes to the management of open spaces until Council adopts and updates the plan with the involvement of significant stakeholders. Of particular concern to us is the proposed decommissioning of Allura Reserve, or Pippi Point as it's referred to by locals in Davistown. We're strongly against the decommissioning or relocation of the site. This area has been a very popular off-leash area for almost 40 years and it's a hugely important community asset. It's become a community centre of sorts for the locals and is a vital part of the area's identity. Council wish to close this off-leash area so that an artificial site can be created for a nesting pair of bushstone curlew, even though there are no records or anecdotal evidence of them ever nesting, breeding or roosting here. Allura Reserve is not a historically important site, environmentally significant or even suitable habitat, as evidenced by several environmental reports commissioned by Council themselves over the years. We note that Council intends to engage an independent expert to provide them with advice in relation to the environmental sensitivities or otherwise in relation to the current Davistown off-leash area and the Bushstone curlew. We hope that any assessment conducted truly is independent and is not used in order to provide the desired result. And we would like to remind Council of the fact that despite having spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of ratepayers' money on Bushstone curlew projects in this area over the years, there's yet to be any positive results. The public quite rightly have grave concerns about any further funds being spent here and have little faith in Council's commitment to maintain or provide regular management actions for these areas based on past history. A far more sensible and economically sound evidence-based approach to safeguarding endangered bird species can be seen in Council's own management of the little turn at the entrance north, where temporary fencing is erected during breeding season. The birds are protected as and when they are present with minimal impact to the community. As I'm sure you're aware by now, you cannot simply build an area for Bushstone curlews and expect them to use it. Far more sensible to find out where they nest and protect that area. We also hope that Council has not chosen to ignore the voice of our local Gurungai Indigenous custodian, Phil Pulbrook, who has made them aware of a Bushstone curlew pair who visit the newly proposed off-leash area at Pine Avenue, as well as the presence of sacred native fauna in that area. There have also been reported sightings of endangered green and golden bell frogs in the newly proposed off-leash area, making this option completely unsuitable. We implore Council to retain the Allura Reserve at Davistown as an off-leash area and provide the necessary maintenance and enhancements to make it an area which can be enjoyed by all. We also ask that the Bushstone curlew tag, which has been attached to this tiny, insignificant parcel of land without any basis in scientific evidence or facts, be removed and not used again to justify getting rid of this wonderful off-leash area, which has meant so much to this community for 38 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. And again, pretty much to time. We'll move on. And next we have Imogen De Silva. And Imogen, you're speaking on the same subject, I know. So welcome again.
Yes, I'm not a stranger speaking on this subject.
No.
I would just like to acknowledge that Council had a good look at the community response to the DIOSAP, and that they have agreed that it requires further revision and further consultation. I am grateful for that, but in regards to the further consultation and revision, I would like to make a few points. Firstly, I think that there are a minority of the dog ownership population who do not comply with regulations and create misery for the rest of us who actually do. And I would like to see them managed as opposed to the responsible dog ownership population, which I think is probably about 90%, but that's just my guess. I believe that imposing a new plan is only going to further restrict those who do the right thing by their dogs and by the law. We don't have any councillors currently to provide effective representation for the community to council. Given that we don't have this effective representation, not only should the plan be discontinued until we do have the representation, but the current focus should be on the issues. And I think that we're very much agreed on the issues. One is picking up dog poo. We need more bag dispensers. If these were readily available and provided by council at the places where dogs are walked, ovals, close to parks, that kind of thing, we may well see this problem being reduced. The other problem we have is dogs escaping properties and attacking when they're out on the streets. I understand from several community members in different suburbs that dogs are often picked up and returned to their property with no action being taken against the owners because it happens again and again. Every suburb has identifiable dogs that get out all the time. Whether they attack every single time is a different matter, but the owners should be severely reprimanded and fined, and their enclosures checked to ensure that the dogs don't get out. dog owners walking their dogs on shared footpaths and streets are not leashing their dogs. Many of them are repeat offenders. I can name all the people in New Minor who think that they are above the law and walk their dogs down the streets on shared footpaths without using a leash. I consistently report them to council, and consistently nothing happens because I see them constantly doing the same things, even though I have descriptions of the people and I can identify them. Many, I actually know their names because the dog community is pretty big and we all communicate. Yesterday, I witnessed a man sitting outside Woolies on West Street, New Minor, with a large Mastiff cross, an intact Mastiff cross, no collar, no lead, and the dog was greeting people exiting Woolies, and the man said he won't bite. How did he know that? And what would he do if the dog attacked? I have no idea. But people often walk down Springwood with their dogs off leash, and they're often dogs that are potentially dangerous.
Imogen, I'll have to ask you to finish up too, or just the last sentence, please.
Okay, I'm concerned that engagement with the community has been minimal. I met a man a month ago who's lived on the coast for the past 17 years with a dog in his 40s who hadn't heard anything about the DISAP. In the future consultation, we need the voices of shift workers and disabled people heard. So I would like there to be significant representation of those groups of the community in the next consultation, please.
Thank you, Imogen.
Thank
and
you.
Our last speaker is Mark Ellis, speaking on item 2.7, which is the Gosford Waterfront concept plan, preliminary consultation results. So Mark, I can see you there. Welcome. You're on mute, I think.
On mute, maybe.
No, you're right now. That's it. Now you're on mute again.
Right, here we go. Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Yeah, I'm speaking on item 2.7 on behalf of the Australian Conservation Foundation Central Coast Community Group on this issue. Our members have reviewed the document and they've seen that for all the stats offered in an engagement summary and the market survey, only 61% of the respondents were unaware of the Gosford waterfront development. And from that survey, of 600 people, only 43% supported it. But how many of those responses were from the 39,000 residents of the Central Coast LGA? But so the question is this really statistically significant as the report suggests? And is this report really transparent, or is it really pushing an agenda? So this preliminary report, it portrays a pre-picture of jobs and growth and everyone's happy, with the market survey, though, showing that the top three comments about problems with environmental impact, waterways pollution, and traffic congestion. That's in their own market survey. So why are we just focusing on economics and development at the cost of this open space and the environment and the natural amenity? Some people actually like natural amenity, rather than concrete. Why do you, Mr. Administrator, and the Council's Economic Development and Property section think business as usual is the way to go in a climate crisis? Another question is, how does this concept plan fit in with the Brisbane Waters Estuary Management Plan, which we will see there and there, the protected seagrass beds? So how is Council going to protect those beds? Anyway, the Council blurb on the development states this would also increase livability. Well, this won't actually increase livability, and it's a bastardization of the concept, because livability is actually based on the principle of sustainability and sensitivity to nature and the protection of its resources to help mitigate or reverse climate change risks and impacts. Now, the head of Zurich's flood resilience program says coastal cities must control the creation of new risks. This means adopting policies that prevent new development or an increase in population density arising in areas that will be most affected by sea level rise. And we know this area is going to be affected by sea level rise because in 2009, the New South Wales state government created a map showing this would be increasing by over 1 metre. Now, that was 2009. We're now past the IPCC's now 6th report, and they've stated they're going beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius. And that's going to make much more flooding. So in the end, We know it's going to flood. We know there's a problem. Why are we putting so much money into it? We suggest an alteration to the recommendations that adding in a point 3, the council acknowledges the environmental impacts and concerns raised during the public consultation about the Gosford Waterfront Renewal Project, and the council will further address the ecological and financial costs of the Gosford Waterfront Concept Plan by including climate risk to the proposed infrastructure and residential development in the forthcoming report. I will close this with this quote from the 6th assessment report of the IPC World Ocean Summit, where it says the scientific evidence is unequivocal. Climate change is real and has caused substantial damage and increasingly irreversible losses in terrestrial freshwater and coastal ecosystems. Why are we doing this to Brisbane water? It needs natural environment, and this natural environment needs your support, not more concrete. Okay. Thanks for your time and have a great Christmas.
Thank you, Mark. A very energetic presentation and talk, and yeah, thank you for your comments. With that, that is the last speaker. So I will now declare the public forum closed, and you are invited to reconnect and watch the webcast of the council meeting, which will commence at 6:30, and you can find a link to that webcast on our website. So thank you.
We're now live streaming.
Well, once again, welcome to the Central Coast Council ordinary meeting of the 13th of December 2022. Again, I'd like to pay my respect to the traditional owners of the land upon which we're meeting here today and pay my respects to elders past, present and those emerging. I just want to first of all, I guess, apologise that we had to do the meeting via electronic means simply because on Saturday morning I tested positive for COVID, which I have to say the first couple of days haven't been all that pleasant, but I must put a big plug in for the antivirals. Being the age of which I am, I was eligible to those and I managed to get onto those pretty quickly. And I have to say at the moment, it does appear that the symptoms are fairly minimal compared to what other people have had to suffer. But nonetheless, I still remain infectious. And the CEO and I decided that it was not prudent not to put staff and the members of the public at risk by having the council meeting in the chamber itself. I understand that we have made the meeting rooms next door available, and I understand there's some people in there. So welcome and thank you for coming along to that. And as I said, I apologise for not being there in person. I felt I could be there, but our protocol said that it wasn't a good idea. And I have to say, I wouldn't wish it upon anybody, because particularly those who are not eligible for the antivirals, because there's no question they make one hell of a difference. Just to remind people that this meeting is being webcast, just to be careful of what you say, and that what you say is being broadcast, and we take no responsibility for any comments that you might make. I also want to just mention very quickly that we've had a great bit of news this week, which the fact is that FIFA, the Women's World Cup in 2023, we're going to get two of the big teams. We're going to have Germany and England are going to be based up in our part of the world. And I think that's just fabulous, particularly for our young women and women who play sport, because having seen firsthand in New Zealand what happened with the Women's Rugby World Cup and what it did for New Zealand with 45,000, a full house, watching New Zealand's opening game against Australia and the closing game, which was the final, which actually incidentally New Zealand won, it was an amazing event. And the way women's sport has taken off in New Zealand on the back of that has just been sensational. So we must never underestimate what getting that win for us here, what it's going to do for us in this part of the world. And I certainly look forward to welcoming both England and Germany to our region in 2023. Now, I will move straight into consideration of the sort of the business that's on the agenda for tonight. And item 1.1 is items of conflicts of interest. And I have no interest to declare. I don't believe any of the staff have. I can see them all above me at the top, and none of them have got their hands up. So that's all good. So with that, we will move the resolution that is shown on the screen. Item 1.2, which is confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. I can confirm, because I've read them and I was present, that the minutes are a correct record of that last meeting. So we'll again confirm those minutes as shown on the screen. Item 1.3, which is a notice of intention to deal with matters in closed session. Once again, we do not have any matters to be discussed in a closed session. So I would ask the council to note that no matters have been tabled and record that as a decision of council. Now, I have an administrator's minute tonight, which is item 1.4. And this has come about because as part of the sort of last 15 days of activism against the gender-based violence campaigns, which council again is participating in this year, I recently attended an event which was run by the police, where I heard stories from some of the survivors of domestic violence and was absolutely alarmed by the statistics that were put in front of us. We had the second highest number of domestic violence incidents in New South Wales, and this is overrepresented in terms of ABOs. So one of the things the police talked to me about when I had a conversation with them there is they have nowhere to place victims immediately. So when they are called to a domestic violent incident and they need to separate people, they have nowhere to take one of the participants. And these alarming statistics also fall within the context that we are very, very short of affordable housing units around the place. And that's a crisis that's also causing us major problems. As you're aware, at the last council meeting, I did approve a Pacific Link to be a partner in an affordable housing program to hopefully produce something like 50 odd units down at the entrance. And that should be at least a start towards going and making some sort of inroads into providing affordable housing. What I'm going to ask to do via this administrator's minutes, I'm going to ask the staff to come back next year with a list of land that might be available, for domestic violent type buildings, which may have slightly different requirements from those from just straight affordable housing, and try and get that list up and see if we can't do something more to make a difference in this part of the world. There is little point in my mind for the council to sit on land and hang on to land, particularly that is zoned residential in some way or other, for something into the future when we have pressing needs right now and when we can actually do something about it. So with that, I'm going to formally move the council prepare a report which provides a list of suitable land available for use by affordable and emergency housing providers on the Central Coast. And also the council staff provide this report back to council no later than the June 2023 council meeting. So with that, I hope the council staff will get on with that and look forward to seeing that report back. We'll move on now to item 2.1, which is considerations of submissions and adoption of the draft Central Coast First Nations Accord. We've had a couple of speakers on that earlier, and I believe Mr. Glenn Cannard, who I know has had a lot of involvement with this program and has been doing an awful lot of what I have to say is very, very good work. So Glenn, would you like to just introduce this paper?
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Yes, look, well, as the CEO of Dark and Young, I think, outlined before, the coast has a large and growing First Nations community. There's been over 17,000 identified in the recent census, and that equates to over 8,200 households. The median age is really young. It's currently 23. So from a demographic perspective, that's really important, and it certainly fits with the intent of what we're trying to do through the Accord. The majority of the local First Nations community have relocated to the coast for a better life and for opportunities that exist within our region. We've known that's been the case for many years. So the Accord has been developed in partnership with the local First Nations community to provide a framework to work together to improve the quality of life of our local First Nations community and to further reconciliation and cultural understanding within the entire community. A critical path to ensure these collective aims are met is to strengthen the relationships that already exist and form new partnerships with both the First Nations community and the community organisations that are tasked with improving their quality of life. The Accord has been designed to complement, support and provide local context for other government frameworks that are already in existence, such as local decision making and the federal approach to closing the gap. Two key actions from the Accord will help with these overall objectives. One is the development of a new MOU with Young Local Aboriginal Land Council, the largest representative body for our local Aboriginal community that have a statutory role to support and represent them. And the other is to establish an Aboriginal Advisory Committee to ensure that representative voices can be heard and a clear mechanism is in place to work together to achieve the aims and the outcome and the objectives of the Accord. The Aboriginal Advisory Committee will comprise 8 representatives drawn from across the local Aboriginal community and will be broadly representative of that community with no more than 1 representative from any organisation and representation from the general community. Through the public consultation period, 288 submissions were received. Some were very detailed and complex. Overwhelmingly, the feedback received related to the proposal to formally acknowledge the role of Young, and community sentiment was split on the matter. Overall, commentary on the specifics of the Accord itself were very positive, with little change identified as being required. The support through submissions from local Aboriginal controlled community organisation was extremely positive, with many believing that the Accord and the objectives within will make a positive difference to the way we collectively work to improve the quality of life of our community. As previous, Council acknowledged there are differing views on the topic of traditional ownership. The majority of public submissions related to this subject. To ensure clarity, we did seek independent external legal advice on the matter. Again, it's important to state that Council play no role in determining matters related to native title or traditional ownership, and the advice that we received has confirmed what has been stated to date. There are no currently registered nor determined native title claims locally. In the absence of a formal or legal determination, it is generally accepted that acknowledging anyone as a traditional owner is through broad-based agreement and general acceptance within the local Aboriginal community, and that's appropriate, that is the mechanism when there is no legal determination. It was on this basis, as outlined within the report, that the initial proposal to recognise Young was put forward. However, given the community feedback and the imminent development of the Aboriginal Advisory Committee, it is now proposed to defer any further discussion on a formal acknowledgement to the Aboriginal Advisory Committee for discussion and further direction. In summary, the Court is an important step forward for Council to walk together with our local First Nation community to provide opportunities and enrich the lives of our entire population.
Thank you, Kennard. Look, I too received an awful lot of correspondence on this matter, and I think at the depth which we had to go into to, I think, understand what concerns were and how they could be, if you like, handled, meant that the staff had to do, and particularly Glenn himself, had to do an awful lot of work. I'm very pleased we actually got legal advice, because when you look at, the Native Title Act and what that actually entails, it is extremely clear that there is nothing, as Mr. Kennard said, that is clear-cut in our part of the world. So we basically de facto have to fall back to what the New South Wales government did, which is in recognising that there is a land council, which is Darkinjong, and they make a very large majority of the Central Coast, along with the Metropolitan Land Council, which occupies a tiny little part of it. So I think separating the thing as we've approached it into two things. One, an accord to work with First Nations and First Nation people means we are working with all Aboriginal for the betterment of Aboriginal on the Central Coast. And given, as there was one of our speakers mentioned earlier, the number of Aboriginals is growing faster than pretty much anywhere else in Australia. And we're already one of the larger populations of Aboriginals again throughout Australia. So it is something that we must and have to do, is to work with our Land Council, which is the formally recognised Land Council for this part of the world, because they are one of the largest, if not the largest, landholder in the area. And when we're looking at things like trying to provide affordable housing and other things, it's clear we have to work in partnership with them to try and make sure that we accommodate all people into our area. So I have to say the work that's gone on to get to a situation where I feel comfortable to be able to endorse the recommendations that have been put in front of me has been an awful lot of work. The advisory committee, I think, will be very, very good. I look forward to chairing that when it gets underway. It's not a role that is entirely unfamiliar to me. I'd had to play a similar role in New Zealand as we were doing some final settlements under the Treaty of Waitangi with Maori over there. So it's something that I really enjoy, actually trying to make sure that we work together to achieve things for all people who live on the Central Coast. So with that, I'm going to actually move those recommendations, but I've also need to add another two to it. I also want to do, I think it will be recommendation number 8, that's okay, that's one's come first before number 9, that we do note there was a discrepancy between the review period for the MOU in the papers. One said 2 years, the other said 3 years. So just to make it clear, that resolution number 8 just says the review period will be 3 years for the MOU, which is between Darkinjong and the council. And also, I want to acknowledge and take the opportunity that the council acknowledges and supports the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And I think that's terribly important that we do that just for completeness. And it signals a new time for the Central Coast to be able to now move forward, and I hope make a big, big difference to particularly our Aboriginal population, but also to all people who live on the Central Coast. So with that, I'm going to move all those recommendations that are shown on the screen and make those. Thank you. Item 2.2 we'll move to now, which is exhibition of the draft plan of management for community land. Dr. Howe, I believe you're going to just say a few words and just hopefully assure our speakers that we do follow all the rules and that we have no intention of breaking any of them.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. I do have a short presentation relating to this matter, which relates to a resolution of Council to publicly exhibit an updated plan of management for community land. I just also note that our property team is responsible for dealings relating to both community and council land and works hard to implement the resolutions of Council with respect to those holdings. Next slide. Oh, this slide, please. The draft plan of management before Council tonight sets out how this land can be used and categorises it as either parks, sports field, natural area, or general community use. The draft POM covers almost 2,400 lots of community land, and once adopted will replace more than 20 existing POMs. I do apologise that the attachments to the report were not available before tonight. We have provided for a substantial exhibition period for interested members of the community to review these attachments before Council considers adopting a final plan. Next slide, please. The draft POM will contain a set of 28 maps which identify the land to which the POM applies and the categorisation that's been applied to it. Next slide, please. The public exhibition will take place for an extended period, as I mentioned, from mid-December to mid-February to allow for that Christmas break, and public hearings will be held in early February. Submissions will be received until the 21st of February, and that feedback will be considered prior to a further report recommending adoption of a final version of the POM. And I would also note that these are all community land parcels and there is no intention to reclassify them as part of this process. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Howard. I'm pretty sure that, hopefully that's reassuring to our earlier speaker. There is definitely no intention. At the moment, we have a lot of community land out there which do not have plans of management. So an all-encompassing plan like this will cover all of those for the time being. unless there's any need to go into more detail, as we will do in a small number of areas. So I'm very pleased that we've actually got on with this. It is not an attempt to transfer land from community to operational. It is purely about making sure that we've got proper plans of management in place for all areas that this council area controls, and that if we have them under a common one, then it makes it a lot easier for people to understand what the rules are and what we can and what we can't do. So I look forward to that taking place, and as Dr. Howe said, it is all out for consultation literally as we speak. So that's a good thing. So with that, I'm quite comfortable to say let's get on with it and let's get plans out there for consultation. And with that, I'd like to move ahead and resolve to adopt the resolutions that are shown on the screen. We'll now move to item 2.3, which is the sale of certain Gosford holdings to the Minister for Skills and Training. Dr. Howell, I believe you can probably talk to some of that. And again, that was a concern for some of our residents. I would make the comment that regardless, the council now lives in one building, and we do not require that other building for any other purpose at this point in time, certainly not for staff. And any monies that we receive from a sale there will goes towards repaying debt, which we've made substantial progress on at the present point in time, but it will go against that. And if a future council so desires to do anything with it, they will always have the facility to draw back down against that those repayment of loans. So it is not lost. It's not being spent on other things. It is just going to go against debt when this transaction takes place. But Dr. Howe, I'll let you continue.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. So this report seeks a council resolution to delegate to the CEO the authority to finalise the entering into a contract for sale of the former Gosford Administration Building and associated sites to TAFE. In relation to Mr. Waters' public forum earlier, about the proposal for a cultural precinct at this site, just note that Council resolved in September 2019 to progress the regional library redevelopment separately to a review of a cultural precinct at the location, and a further resolution was made in December 2019 to reallocate funds for that cultural precinct to the regional library. Next slide, please. In late 2021, TAFE and Landcom approached Council expressing interest in purchasing these 4 parcels of land in the Gosford CBD, which do include the former Gosford Council chambers. Council resolved at its December 21 meeting to negotiate the sale of these lots for the purposes of a major new TAFE campus. Next slide, please. That campus will bring much needed vocational training to the Central Coast and contribute to the revitalisation of Gosford. Parties have now negotiated terms for the sale, and a market valuation is provided in the confidential attachment. The next step is to progress to exchange of a conditional contract, and that will provide for TAFE to finalise its business case for the investment of government funds for the design that's shown in this concept plan, but also for Council to progress reclassification of the land. So in relation to Ms Cummings' public forum, it certainly is a condition that this land is reclassified as operational land prior to that sale proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Howe. Yes, that's a good explanation. And just looking at the concept plan, it certainly would look like to be a welcome addition to that part of the Gosford city. So I'm, as I said, comfortable to continue to proceed with this. It was, as I said, there's good sound business reasons for doing what we're doing. And as I said, the money, should we get the money from a sale, will not be lost. It will be offset against current debt, and therefore is available for future councillors to draw down that money again and reuse it for something else should they so desire. So with that, I'm now going to resolve to adopt those resolutions that are shown on the screen. And we'll move to item 2.4, which is a planning proposal for 33 Gugandi Road, Narara. And just Dr. Howe again, I think. You've got a lot tonight, haven't you?
This is a resolution to prepare a planning proposal, as you mentioned, to rezone land at Narara Eco Village and to renegotiate the existing voluntary planning agreement. Next slide, please. The site is to the northwest of Narara High School and east of Strickland State Forest, as shown in the slide when it comes back. Slide 3, the next one after that, shows the proposal to reduce the minimum lot size for low density residential land from 550 square metres to 450 square metres, to rezone the RE1 public recreation land to C3 environmental management, and to apply a minimum of lot size of 20 hectares to those lands. And it also proposes to permit multi-dwelling housing and commercial premises in the low density residential land. The amendment to the planning agreement relates to a proposal to swap some land proposed for open space along the creek line with land proposed for the coastal open space system on the ridge line. Council's of a view that those open space lands are surplus to the needs of the local area and difficult to maintain because they are flood prone, whereas the environmental management lands would be a welcome addition to the COS network. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, if you could go back one. The concept plan is to subdivide 7 lots into smaller lots, which will create an additional 7 lots, which are shown in brown on the slide, and provide for up to 15 additional cluster houses, which are shown in shaded pink. The commercial activity is around repurposing some of the buildings, which were formerly Department of Primary Industries Research Station, for local employment purposes. Next slide, please. So this is the first stage of the rezoning process. Sorry, the next one after this one, please. Should the Department of Planning issue a gateway determination, the proposal would proceed to public exhibition. Just as part of that referral to the Department of Planning, Council referred the planning proposal to the local planning panel for advice. This was considered at the panel's meeting of last Thursday, and is provided in attachment 3. And again, that was included in the supplementary report tonight. We only just received the minutes of the planning panel's meeting today. And obviously that was after the business paper was published. So we would propose to amend the recommendations before you tonight to include a referral of that advice to the Minister for Planning along with the planning proposal. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
No, apologies for the short break, but I was having a bit of coughing fit there. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Howe. I think we can move forward with those recommendations. I think there's another extra one at the bottom, which is a new one, which we'll just have to note, which is authorize. We keep going. Okay. So it is the authorizing, I think where are we?
So a new point 3, submit the local planning council
point 3, right? Okay, there
response to it, and then renumbering the ones after that.
Yeah. Okay. So with that additional recommendation, I'm happy to move those recommendations and make them as a decision of council. We'll move now to item 2.5, which is agritourism reforms and the option to nominate additional LEP clauses. Dr. Howe again.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. I'd also like to acknowledge the feedback that we received from our local agricultural community around these reforms and the potential impact, which has resulted in us advocating to the Department of Planning for some changes. I'm really pleased to see that that feedback has been recognised in the current reforms. So these planning amendments for agriculture are to support farm businesses and regional economies by providing additional income opportunities. And the department is seeking confirmation on whether council would like to opt into 2 additional clauses provided in the reforms, and whether additional zones beyond the primary production and rural landscape zones should be nominated to permit agrotourism. The optional clauses would amend the Central Coast LEP, and the objectives of the clauses are to diversify the use of agricultural land without adversely impacting the principal use of that land, and to balance the impact of tourism and related uses with the use of the land for primary production. Council staff recommend inclusion of the optional clause 5.24, which is provided in the report, which provides for farm stay accommodation, but not to opt into clause 5.25 for farm gate premises, as on the advice of our local agricultural community, this would impose additional development standards on their farm gate activities. We also suggest that council not nominate additional zones where agritourism be permitted. We feel that it would be better to do that review in a more comprehensive manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Howe. And it's interesting, I had some representations in the past from farmers who were very concerned about the fact that they weren't able to do some of the things which hopefully this will now allow them to do, and be more flexible with the use of their land and also for their economic prosperity. So with that, I'm also happy to move those recommendations as shown on the screen and make them a decision of council. Thank you. Item 2.6, which we had a couple of speakers on today, which is the Dogs and Open Spaces Action Plan. Dr. Howe, you might just outline what I think is a very sensible solution to where we are at the moment, which is let's go back out, narrow it down, make it very clear to the community exactly what we're proposing, and let's get some more feedback and go from there.
Thank you. The report is just providing an update on the consultation that's been undertaken on the draft Dogs in Open Space Action Plan. Next slide, please. So what this plan is aiming to achieve is to provide guidance on the management of dogs across the Central Coast. Many are aware that we have the highest rate of companion animal ownership in New South Wales, and that creates competing interests and pressures on Council's open space network. Next slide, please. The draft plan was publicly exhibited from the 1st of July to the 26th of August. And again, we know how much interest there is in companion animals, and that was a very extended exhibition period. We received about 3,200 submissions presenting a diverse range of views on the plan. Next slide, please. A summary of the feedback is provided in attachment 1, and perhaps too much information to take in on the slide here today. There was general support for the principles in the plan, but a range of views on some of the specific actions. Next slide, please. The 3 material areas of concern related to changes at the off-leash areas at the Haven Terrigal and Allura Reserve Davistown, which Mr. Rowe addressed the public forum on, and also concerns around the proposal for timed access to beaches. And I note Ms. De Silva also made reference to the access for shift workers and people with disability. The next slide, please. To progress the plan, we're proposing to seek some specialist advice, and particularly relating to the interactions with the bushstone curlew at Davidstown that Mr. Rowe mentioned, and redraft the plan to make it easier to interpret. And we're proposing to re-exhibit a draft plan in the new year. And in the meantime, the current arrangements for use of open space by dogs would be maintained. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Howe. Nothing more to add to that one. As I said, I think it's a sound idea to go out and narrow down just what we are going to do and make it very clear, and then get the feedback, and then we will need to make some decisions. Now, we will move to therefore adopt those resolutions that are shown on the screen for item 2.6. Moving right along to item 2.7, which is the Gosford Waterfront Concept Plan. And again, Dr. Howe, you might just like to outline some of those amazing comments and results that we've had from our consultation so far.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. This is an update on the preliminary results from the recent Gosford Waterfront Concept Plan consultation. Next slide, please. The concept plan was adopted by Council in September and was exhibited from the 18th of October to the 1st of December. Engagement channels included information sessions, interactive concept plans, feedback forms, business forums, and key stakeholder meetings, as well as a representative community survey. Next slide, please. The feedback was extensive, with over 7,500 visits to our Your Voice, our Coast page, and over 6,000 visits to our interactive concept plans page, which substantially exceeded our engagement targets. Next slide, please. We also engaged with a range of key stakeholders that have had a role in the long-term planning and delivery of a revitalised Gosford. And on behalf of the project team, I'd like to thank everyone who made a submission for their feedback. In summary, that feedback was overwhelmingly positive, with 81.5% of those commenting through council's channels and 93% of those commenting through the independent survey, either neutral or supportive about the project. So the next steps from here and the recommendation suggests that we continue to engage with the New South Wales Government about the next step, which is to do more of that detailed analysis that Mr. Ellis suggested. So there has been preliminary assessment of things like climate change impacts and environmental impacts more generally on Brisbane water, and we would need to progress to the next stage of detail as part of our progress towards Gateway 2, which is to prepare a business case for a potential New South Wales Government investment. Thank you, Mr. Administrator. You're on mute, Mr. Administrator.
Sorry about that. I had a bit of coughing and I forgot to unmute myself. Anyway, thank you for that reminder. Look, thank you, Dr. Howe. It's, I've, obviously fully endorse the fact that we now move on to this Gateway 2, the second sort of kind of major stage of the process. But the overall positivity that project is generating, I have to say, is fantastic. And let's hope that we can get further progress and get some of the more finer detail that which we need to do sorted out. So with that, we will move to the next stage, and therefore happy to approve the recommendations that are shown on the screen. We'll now move to item 2.8, which is the amendment to the Code of Conduct and procedures for the administration of the Code of Conduct. This is just a simple change. It's a simple addition. We're adding into the Code of Conduct a section as recommended by the local government office, just a section on a child safe policy and so on, and what constitutes abuses of the of children. So with that, those amendments are going to be just picked up from what the Office of Local Government have recommended and added into our Code of Conduct. So it's a simple administrative change on the advice of the Office of Local Government. So with that, I'm happy to move those recommendations that are shown on the screen. And we'll go to item 2.9 now. And Mr. Dr. Howard, just a couple of comments on that. I've had some experience with that, and I have to say, going back in my days when I was, I guess, helping troubleshoot for some other councils at the state level in a major council, where there was some difficulties between an administrator and a CEO, I found that there was no checks and balances on who signed off on a planning proposal or planning agreement. It at the time was solely in the hands of the CEO, which from a governance point of view and a risk from a fraud corruption point of view is clearly not on. So making sure that we've got proper planning agreement policies or planning proposal policies in place, I think is absolutely imperative to safeguard the community and to ensure that there is no corruption that occurs. So Alice, I might have stolen a couple of bits of your thunder, but nonetheless, that's how I feel about it. So yours.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. And this is part of our ongoing integration of former Gosford and Wyong policy positions. So we have prepared a new draft planning agreements policy for public exhibition. It sets out the principles and procedures relating to the use of planning agreements applying to land and development across the Central Coast. It's proposed to repeal the voluntary planning agreements policy for Gosford City Centre immediately, as council cannot levy contributions in accordance with this plan, as it refers to outdated bonus incentive clauses that were contained in the former Gosford LEP, which, as we know, has been consolidated now into the Central Coast LEP. 28-day public exhibition period is proposed, after which a further report would be brought back to council. Should the Central Coast Planning Agreement policy be adopted, it's also recommended that the Wyong Planning Agreement policy, the deed of agreement and bank guarantee policy and deferred payment of Section 94 contributions policies would all be repealed and replaced by this new planning agreements policy. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good and timely tidy up. So with that, happy to endorse those amendments to the council's planning policy agreement policy, and to repeal a couple of the other policies. So with that, I'll move those recommendations that are shown on the screen, make those a decision of council. We'll move on to item 2.10, which is Community Supports Grants Program. This comes up periodically, and the council does allocate $300,000 per annum for a grants program here for community support grants. And happy to say that there's a further announcement here that of a further 26,000, which can be allocated out. And it means we've now spent nearly half the money, which, given we're pretty much halfway through the year, I think is a good effort. And because I always fail to see why, when we're trying to give money away, that we don't seem to be able to find an ability to give it away. So great to see we're on track here this time, where the money, with this means successful organisations who will each get some small grants, which will no doubt go towards helping them and their communities. So with that, happy to resolve to adopt that resolution as shown on the screen. Moving to item 2.11, social media policy. Again, the Office of Local Government have put out a draft, draft policy and have made that available to us. And our intention is that we endorse that and make that policy that the OLG have put forward. We make that a policy of the councils to cover the social media area, and we will endorse that draft and we'll put it out for consultation. So happy to make that get underway, and we'll look forward to any feedback on that draft social media policy. So with that, we will revoke the former policies and endorse the draft social media policy, which is already been done, and make it available on our website, and obviously allow the Chief Executive to make any minor alterations if necessary. So with that, we'll resolve to adopt the resolution as shown on the screen. Item 2.12, it's an application for a memorial seat for Mr. Stephen Hollis. We get these from time to time where a family wants to recognise the good works and deeds that someone in the family has carried out, and of course we're happy to oblige with that. And in this case, the family has met all the requirements, which include looking after the particular asset that they're providing for the public. So in this case, the seat. And I look forward to now approving that application for a memorial seat to acknowledge the contribution of Mr. Hollis to the community of the Central Coast. There's no doubt from his family and other people that were spoken to that he made us, a very substantial contribution, and it's great to see people like him being acknowledged. So with that, I'm happy to pass that resolution for 2.12 as shown on the screen. Now we're moving on to item 2.13 or 2.13, which is the monthly investment report. And I think Marissa Racola-Malara, this is your first one you're talking to, is that correct?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
And you got two in a row too. How's that?
Excellent.
Anyway, again, welcome to you, and great to see you here.
Thank you. And as you're aware, we would normally present standard financial reports, being a monthly update and an investment report. However, due to the timing of this meeting being in week 2 of the month rather than week 4, the end of month processes have not yet been finalised. And so the November monthly financial report will be presented to the January council meeting. That leaves us today with the investment report, and the change of date has also had an impact there, meaning that some of the data in table 2 is in draft format. However, the bottom line of that table, that is the total amount in each fund, is accurate to 30th of November. This table will be updated in the November monthly financial report that will be tabled in January as noted above. All other information in the report is up to date. And the key takeaway of the report is that during November, Council's total cash and investments increased by 29.12 million to 707 million, which continues our path to financial stability. So the report presents a detailed overview of all current investment and cash holdings. Thanks.
Thank you, Marissa. That's great. It's good news always, and long may it continue. But thank you for that. And with that, obviously happy to, if the council notes the recommendations that are shown on the screen. And then the final item, 2.14, is the Administrator Expenses and Facilities Report to 31 October 2022. And I think, Marissa, you're going to speak to that as well, since actually it's about me.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. This report outlines the provision of facilities and expenses to the Administrator for the period May to October 2022, meeting the requirements of the Council Facilities and Expenses Policy. The reporting period, May to October 2022, 6 months, saw a number of changes in public health orders, which enabled the Administrator to more actively engage with the local community face-to-face and to participate in the return of regular local government meetings, conferences and advocacy opportunities across the state. These had previously been suspended or deferred during COVID lockdowns and public health restrictions. The ability to meet with local individuals and organisations to understand their goals and challenges and being able to present these at regional and state levels offers benefits to the community in decision-making, grant opportunities and future investment in the Central Coast community. Although some expenses have increased from the previously reported period, it should be noted that these expenses are well within the limits of the adopted policy and budget of $93,500, with the current total expenditure almost halfway through the year of just over $30,000. This expenditure also represents a significant decrease in spending on mayoral and councillor facilities, given that in the financial year 2020 to 2021, the budget accounted for allocated expenses and facilities of over $535,000, contributing to organisational efficiencies and stronger financial management. Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. I will just now resolve to note the report on the Administrator Expenses and Facilities Report up till 31 October 2022. And with that, that is a decision of Council. And that is the last meeting that was our last agenda item for tonight's meeting. And I managed to last it without too many coughing fits. So hopefully you didn't hear them, but I had a couple there where I even had to blank the screen. But the antivirals have worked very well, but not that well. Okay, with that, I am now going to close the meeting at 7:18, and thank you for those who've attended, and thank you for taking the time to come along and speak tonight, even though it was electronically. Good night.